Let's try that again. All right. That's a beautiful thing. I love it when the computers are firing up and they're trying to do their thing. And all of a sudden, like, oh, there we go. Things suddenly decide to disappear. You're listening to On the Horn.
The Hartford Online Radio Network. On the Horn.
onthehorn.com.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a little late, but it's News Talk Tonight. You're listening to Dave Moore, and we are brought to you, News Talk Tonight, by Gateway Financial Partners, Amazon.com, Sandus Travels, Sherpa Technologies, Budwood Meyer Jack CPAs, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, and CentralCTDental.com. We're going to have a slightly abbreviated show tonight, and the reason is that I am taking my 20-year-old daughter out to dinner because it's her birthday. Otherwise, I would have been coming on 7:30-ish. Instead, it's 5:30-ish. Tonight, we are going to be dealing with a few interesting things. A lot of it having to do with economics, both on the state and municipal level and a little on the federal level. And we've got some interesting politics going on. Why don't we get right to it? State Comptroller Kevin Lembo certified a deficit of $131.1 million as of March 1st, 2013. This was through a letter that was sent to the governor's office as of March 1st. The good news is that it is $9 million lower than the deficit that he certified in the beginning of February. The bad news is that it is higher than the legislature's Office of Fiscal Analysis, $128 million, or the governor's Office of Policy and Management, $55.7 million. Lembo, in his letter this last Friday, agrees with the revenue forecast, but he indicates that the spending trend is about $76 million, more or less, above the estimates, above the OPMs. The difference continues to be the Medicaid caseloads, which continue to exceed expectations. It's not that the Medicaid is exceeding expectations. It's that the number of people who've signed up for Medicaid well exceeds expectations. April continues to be the magic month when revenues are expected to increase considerably due to the payment of income taxes. There will also be what Lembo calls sequestration investments that may be made that will give us a slight uptick as far as the revenues are concerned. This counterbalances the fact that we've lost 1,800 jobs in December, and the unemployment rate continues at its record high of 8.6% in the state of Connecticut. The state of Connecticut's unemployment rate actually is about 5%, maybe higher than the national unemployment rate. National unemployment rate has been actually around 7.9, 8%, 8.1, depending on who you talk to. As indicated, the Medicaid train is what is really driving the deficit. And we've discovered this last week that the Federal Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services has denied the state of Connecticut's request for a waiver, which, if granted, would have eliminated coverage for 13,381 very low-income individuals for an approximate one-year period. This means that the Medicaid drain on our state economy is going to continue, and it's going to continue at a significant rate. The governor is also trying to continue to push to have 40,000 low-income parents of Husky kids who are insured by the state Husky plan to be dropped. In the current budget proposal, the governor proposes asking parents that are between 133% and 185% of the federal poverty level, which is about $14,000, with children on the Husky plan to purchase their insurance through the insurance exchange starting in January 2014. That the problem is that no one knows how much the cost of the insurance exchange is actually going to be. Also, since the legislature hasn't actually acted on the governor's budget proposal, we still really don't know what's going to be in and what's going to be out. What we do know is that the deficit that State Comptroller Lembo has certified is for the current fiscal year, which does not run until June 30th, 2013. What the budget deals with is the future revenues and deficits. The proposed budget at this point in time is running, according to the legislature's Office of Fiscal Analysis, almost $1 billion in the red. And there is seemingly no end in sight as far as the state budget woes, because as long as the national economy continues to drag, the state economy will be well behind the federal economy. So even if the federal economy starts to come back, which is unlikely given what we're dealing with relative to the sequester, the state would be several months behind the federal economy. This could be a good thing if the sequester, which is the $85 billion cut that has happened immediately, and the almost $1 trillion cut in various costs and expenditures takes place, say, in the next 10 months. That's a problem. But the good thing is if in fact the state economy lags behind the federal economy the way that it does, then any downturn will be something that we won't necessarily feel right away, unless, of course, you're a defense contractor. But hey, who cares? Now, another budget issue that we are contending with as far as the future budget, not the current budget, is the governor's proposal to eliminate automobile taxes. Now, is that a problem for the state? No, it's a problem for the municipalities. And it's a problem to the tune of $632.8 million. That's how much our towns and cities are going to lose if the governor's proposal to wipe out almost all of the automobile taxes takes place. Now, you'll notice that I said almost all. That's because the proposal says that cars worth less than $28,500 would be exempt from the automobile tax. This means that cars that are worth $28,501 will still be subject to the automobile tax. The problem that towns like Somers, Simsbury, Wallingford, cities like, New Haven have is that there aren't that many cars that are going to be valued at $28,500 or more. In fact, in the town of Somers, 11,481 vehicles would be exempt in that town under the governor's proposal. Roughly 118 would not be. That turns out to be a loss of $1.8 million in revenue for the town of Somers. Now, what happens when the towns receive those losses? Well, the governor argues that it's made up for in additional educational spending that he's proposed. The problem is that those particular revenue income for education is specifically earmarked for education, and it would not really make that much of a difference for the school budgets in the various towns. So the towns end up, in their argument, with a net loss. What does that mean? In order to make up for it, they then have to jack up their mill rates for the real estate taxes. Governor Malloy, even though he was the former mayor of Stanford, has had very little sympathy as far as the town's arguments are concerned. One of the biggest critics of this particular proposal has been Mayor John DeStefano of New Haven. And one of the main reasons why he is critiquing this is that the city of New Haven is potentially going to lose $15 million in revenue from the automobile tax if what was proposed actually went forward. Now, another little budget tidbit. Apparently, both the governor and Senate Minority Leader John McKinney are planning on going on the road to tour the state. Different tours, but it's to talk about the proposed budget. And they are not hitting the same places at the same time. Probably a good thing, because Senator McKinney is an ardent critic of the governor's proposed budget. And it probably would not be one of the most civil discourses that you would find were they to actually cross paths. I guess the governor and Senator McKinney are trying to take a page out of the president's playbook by going out and about the towns and highways and byways of Connecticut to sell their particular line of thinking. One of the reasons why Senator McKinney is doing this is because he has unofficially announced that he is running for governor. The official announcement is supposed to come perhaps later this month, when he forms the exploratory committee and begins to actually raise money. That hasn't happened yet. Now, on the legislative front, one of the things that has been happening is there has been this commission that was formed by the governor, and there has been a legislative task force that was formed by both the Senate and the House. The commission that was set up by the governor took testimony recently, like this last Friday, and they heard the testimony from Trooper First Class Joseph Delahunty of the Firearms Training Unit, who testified against any further gun prevention or gun protection proposals that the legislature apparently is considering. He testified that he is an avid gun enthusiast, and he showed the commission a wide variety of weapons, including assault-style rifles, guns with attached grenade launchers, and revolvers that can fire shotgun shells. I can imagine that this commission, that is not made up entirely of politicians, there were a couple of psychiatrists, were, shall we say, impressed, although not necessarily favorably impressed, with the show and tell that occurred. Delahunty testified that many of the weapons are used for home protection. He argued against making certain types of ammunition only available at firing ranges. Delahunty also testified that many of the weapons had sporting applications. This is the AK-47 as a hunting rifle argument. Delahunty's testimony was a counterpoint to the suggestions that more, not less, restrictions are necessary to protect the public. It should be noted that Connecticut has its own assault rifle or assault weapon ban. That ban, however, does not include the rifle that was used in the Newtown shootings. Senate President pro tempore Donald Williams and Senate Majority Leader Martin Looney sent a letter to their colleagues asking them to act, and to act quickly, noting that Colorado and New York have already acted in the wake of the Newtown shootings. yet we seem to be lagging behind. Leaders from both parties had previously promised to act by the end of February, but a blizzard and scheduling issues got in the way of meeting that timeline. It's understandable. The legislature can't control the weather. It is expected, though, that at the end of today, recommendations will be made in gun safety, mental health, and school safety. But the senators feel as though we are lagging behind somewhat, given the fact that Colorado and New York have already acted. A cautionary note: the legislation that was passed in New York was fairly comprehensive, and it is by far the most far-reaching piece of gun control legislation that has been passed amongst the 50 United States. The governor of New York, who is the son of a former governor of New York, was riding on a 55% approval rating before he signed the legislation. However, Governor Cuomo is now dealing with an approval rating in the mid-40s. He has taken a 10% hit as far as his approval rating since passing that legislation. The legislature in Connecticut, along with the governor, should probably take note of that, because Governor Malloy is just cracking 50% as far as an approval rating is concerned right now. And if he were to take another hit, and God knows with the budget situation, he probably will take a hit, further gun control legislation will probably have a significantly negative impact on his approval rating. We will be back momentarily after I pay some bills.
The Hartford Online Radio Network. On the Horn.
onthehorn.com.
Budwitz and Meyerjack PC is a large Connecticut-based CPA firm with offices in Cheshire and Farmington, Connecticut. Large enough to handle engagements of enterprises with annual revenues in excess of $100 million, yet small enough to cater to smaller businesses and individual clients who expect personalized attention from partners and staff. Client service is the cornerstone of our practice. Our clients have a fixed fee for their audit and tax work. What this means to the client is we're approachable. Personal communication and client services make for strong relationships. Budwitz and Meyerjack, certified public accountants.
Sandits Travel for business and leisure. We'll take you there. Sandits Travel has been proudly serving Connecticut since 1960. That's over 50 years. And we're ready for another 50 years of superior service. Whether you prefer to come in, call in, or log on, we invite you to explore how efficient, diverse, and fun it is to book through Sandits Travel. Save your money and your time with us. Sandits Travel. We'll take you there.
We're also brought to you by CentralCTDental.com. Doctors Camp, Sambor, and Lupini for serious issues or routine checkups. Go nowhere else. Easy to get to on the Plainville-Farmington line, or call 860-747-5761. Make an appointment online, CentralCTDental.com. We're also brought to you by Deepwater Seafood of Avon. Have you been to the only fish market in Farmington Valley? Ooh, that was easy to say. Fresh fish. Telling you, Deepwater is located on Route 44 and is open 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 6:30 p.m., and Saturdays, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. One of the best things about Deepwater is their fish are fresh. 3 deliveries daily to meet your needs. Deepwater has a menu of grilled fish items, scampi, fish and chips, soups, bisques, and chowders. For your catering needs, authentic paella, cedar plank salmon sides, and always the traditional New England clam bake. Deepwater also has the very best shrimp cocktail that you'll find anywhere. Call in your order at 860-676-9657, and they'll have your order ready for pickup when you arrive. Deepwater Seafood of Avon, not just for the halibut. Well, there was one other thing that I had to note as far as the Newtown stuff was concerned. You know, we heard about the Sandy Hook Commission, the antsy Senate Democrats urging speeding up the legislation. Well, there's one other story, and it's one that actually makes me feel kind of bad, because As some of you know, I am a practicing attorney. And anytime that someone who is also a practicing attorney starts doing stuff that doesn't shed light well on the profession, it kind of irks me. And this recent story really irks me. Attorney Irving Pinsky has been pestering the Office of Attorney General for facts and investigation results. Unfortunately, Attorney Pinsky doesn't seem to understand that the Attorney General's office has no control over state police investigations, nor over laws that seal such investigations. Attorney Pinsky, as you may recall, had filed a claim on behalf of a family of a 6-year-old who had been killed at the Sandy Hook school, and then withdrew the claim about a week later after brouhaha public outcry began to emerge. Attorney Pinsky argues that he has about 6 months to conduct and complete an investigation before he can really make the appropriate claim either against the town of Newtown or possibly against the state of Connecticut. That part is true. He does have 6 months to file the appropriate notice, either with the town clerk of Newtown or with the Secretary of State. Of course, he would also need to make a claim against the claim through the claims commissioner in order to perfect his claim against the state of Connecticut, because the state of Connecticut, and to a certain degree the town of Newtown, have what's called sovereign immunity. That means they can't be sued unless they allow it. The claims commissioner's office is how the state allows lawsuits against itself. It is highly unlikely that the claims commissioner is going to rule favorably relative to Attorney Pinsky's client's claims, given the fact that the state of Connecticut has very little to do with school safety. And frankly, I don't think that it would bode well for his clients to try to sue the town of Newtown, because nobody could foresee Adam Lanza acting the way that he did. And there were already security elements in place. The school was locked. Mr. Lanza had to shoot the lock with his weapon, very strong assault-style rifle, in order to gain entrance. One of the other things that, by the way, majority of my news pieces originate from ctnewsjunkie.com. Christine Stewart and her staff, very capable, very able. I tend to take what they have been reporting on, look into things myself, and add my own little slant to it, although I try not to be too slanted. One of the things that was brought up was how Speaker Brennan Sharkey has been aiming for bipartisanship. This is one of the reasons why the super committee that was formed to deal with the Newtown tragedies and the issues that surrounded the Newtown tragedies, that being school safety, gun control, and mental health, are part of the purview of this super committee. And the super committee is what one could argue was Speaker Sharkey's attempt at continuation of bipartisanship. Why is that? Because the super committee is made up of all of the legislative leaders, both the House minority, the House majority, the Senate minority, and the Senate majority leaders, and various committees that are affected, like, for instance, public safety. And the makeup of the committee is strongly bipartisan. While that committee has been understandably late, thanks to the blizzard, that committee has been progressing. The problem that Speaker Sharkey has with his aiming for bipartisanship is that when, in fact, there is no great consensus the majority has a tendency of going forward and pushing through its own agenda. Like, for instance, the minimum wage hike. It has passed the Labor Committee along party lines. This is perhaps not one of the best examples of bipartisanship. Another little ding in the repertoire of the majority party in the legislature is Representative Newton from New London, who made a passing remark to an 18-year-old that some have touted as being sexually harassing. The young lady was testifying in front of one of the House committees about how the State Museum for Kids was really helpful for her to really get confidence in herself, and how her working with the Children's Museum had in fact helped do away with her fear of snakes. Well, apparently, Representative Newton, in an attempt at jest, said, "Well, if you still have any concerns, I have a snake under this desk." Yeah, that didn't go well. The result has been that Representative Newton, who was a deputy House Speaker, has lost his leadership position. That is a loss of about $6,000 a year. And he has apologized to both the young lady as well as to the museum. The young lady has accepted his apology, but it doesn't bode well for the reputation, if you will, of the majority house. Another little tidbit. This last Friday, the Judiciary Committee had a hearing at which 14 prospective judges and a prospective appellate court judge were essentially being considered and testified in front of said committee. One of those prospective judges is Attorney Shelley Marcus. As you may recall from previous newscasts, Attorney Marcus has come under a fair amount of fire for having been involved in the gifting table case that was tried to conclusion this last month at the federal district court. The two defendants were indeed found guilty of several charges, not the least of which was filing a false tax return, federal wire fraud, and federal tax fraud. They are facing 20 years each in the federal penitentiary. Why was Attorney Marcus somewhat tarnished? It was because both defendants had stated in times past that Attorney Marcus was responsible for revising the guideline book that the gifting table group used. Attorney Marcus testified that she, in fact, did not do that, but there was some question as to whether or not she was being completely candid. In fact, when she testified in front of the legislature this last Friday, she did say that she had reviewed it but had not made any revisions. She was also asked questions about a certain malpractice action that was going on against her firm by the town of Brantford. Well, that malpractice action is continuing to percolate on, and Attorney Marcus didn't happen to mention either the malpractice action or the gifting table situation when she went in front of the Judicial Selection Commission, nor did she happen to mention it to the governor. Well, the Judiciary Committee did approve her nomination and passed it on for consideration by the full House and Senate by the vote of 28-12. What is notable is that all the other candidates were unanimously approved. Could be interesting when her particular nomination is taken up by the full House and Senate. Well, It's that magic hour, 6 o'clock, and it is time for me to wrap up. You've been listening to News Talk Tonight. Come on, there we go. Brought to you by Amazon.com, Gateway Financial Partners, Sandits Travel, Sherpa Technologies, Budwitz and Meyerjack CPAs, Deepwater Seafood of Avon, and CentralCTDental.com. I'm Dave Moore. I'll be back next week with more news. See you next week.
onthehorn.com.
onthehorn.com.